morning, everyone. I'm Laura Kmoch. I work at the University of Göttingen in a research group that looks a lot at cultural values in landscapes. Okay, so what I thought I would do is talk about how culture matters in Dryland agroforestry system. Going on the theme of culture, this is a village in Morocco. What I will do is kind of give 3 examples from recent studies that I've been involved in. The first one is this one of a PhD student, Kansanda Tet, that just came out, and what she's been doing in Myanmar is looking at a dryland landscape and 3 native culturally important tree species. It's the jujube trees, the toddy palm, and there you see products from, I have to go here, Tanaka trees, which is kind of a tree where you can use the bark even as a sun cream makeup. Maybe you have seen that before, so it's quite common in Myanmar. And so her focus has been on how those tree species are linked to dietary diversity of people in the landscapes. But what also came out is that those trees are really embedded in the local culture. So they're, in the interviews, people would say, okay, the reason, like we have all these toddy palms, they are the essence of this landscape. We don't have a dryland or dry zone in Myanmar without this toddy palm. And there's a lot of festivals where people would consume different products from those trees. So it's really closely intertwined. And in that sense, having those trees in the landscapes also means they're stabilized by these cultural ties with what people do and how they live. And at the same time, if there's other forces coming in to destabilize kind of those trees and we lose this tree cover, we also lose part of the culture that's attached to it. And from that, I can sort of lead over to the next case, which is a bit similar. So we're in a different landscape as the mountains of the High Atlas in Morocco. It's also a dry landscape. And here we had another PhD student, Chaima Mubarak, also looking at culturally important trees, walnut, almond, olive, ash trees, and stone oaks. And what she did was to interview farmers about those trees or these tree species and which role they play in the culture. So things like, are there specific products made from those trees or the timber? Is there specific language attached to this type of trees? Are there specific festivals? And she found there's a lot, not so much for the oak and the ash trees, but for those nuts trees and the olives. And so what she did in this study is to say those tree species are actual cultural keystone species. So they are kind of a strong element of this Amazigh people. Amazigh people is kind of the local indigenous people. Often you might know them as the Berber people in Morocco. And so the trees are part of the cultural identity of people living in those mountains. And the argument then we make in the article is that understanding those cultural values attached to the trees is really important if we want to go with this framework of biocultural conservation. So conserving the landscape and the biodiversity in the mountains together with kind of the cultural practices and the cultural identity attached to those trees. And an example of that would be that there has been a lot of push to plant apples as a cash crop in the mountains, and farmers are making that switch partly, but that of course also then means, the walnut trees, the almond trees that have been long in the mountains become less important, and with that some of the culture is lost, and that is not necessarily good or bad, but it's a dynamic that's really important to understand perhaps. The last example also from Morocco is an article I finally finished writing. It's not yet submitted. It's a dryland landscape where a lot of people have been leaving and abandoning the land for many different reasons and different drivers coming together. But one aspect or element I found quite interesting in that landscape is that there is a lot of young people also that talk about they would actually like to stay in those landscapes. And the landscape has a lot of meaning. And that's expressed in this term tamasiyat, which is quite interesting. It's from the local language and means something like land, but also community and also home. And so an argument we kind of make in that article is that this concept and this really close tie that people have to the landscape might be a starting point if you want to think about how to draw people back into this landscape, what could be the future of this landscape, engaging in those discussions. Yeah, because people have this close connection. Okay, and to sum up, hopefully I could convince you that there's different elements, different dimensions of culture in agroforestry landscapes, and there's at least some aspects to consider if you haven't done so yourself in landscape research. if you're interested in this kind of research, check out our blog of the research group. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So maybe we say after 4:30 you will hear the frog. You didn't reach that, so that's good. But sorry for flipping the order here. Now I welcome Kristoffer. So I'm sorry for sharing your slides. Kristoffer Hylander from Stockholm University. You will talk about coffee and biodiversity and climate in Ethiopia. Welcome. And they use this mic so that the sound is recorded as well. The green, yes.
Green one here. Okay, thanks for the invitation. And I thought I should engage a bit more in Focali a few years ago, and then I happened to be a lot of administration on my work in Stockholm at my department. So hopefully in a few years I will come back and be more active. But I'm happy to be here today and share a few slides. And then I have to run to a series of meetings after this. I'm very sorry for that. But everyone is welcome to contact me on email afterwards and we can meet up. So I have worked for around 20 years in Ethiopia, and especially with coffee-related questions. So lately we have had a study system with 60 sites with different complexity of coffee agriculture or coffee agroforestry, from forest coffee to plantation coffee. So coffee is native for Ethiopia. The Arabica bean grows inside the forest. But in the home gardens of people, it could look like this, with the coffee under native shade trees. And this is a very rich environment for biodiversity, even if there are differences in the different systems. So coffee is also culturally super important for Ethiopia and for us also. We had coffee here for a moment ago. If you come to Ethiopia, people are serving you coffee. They grow it to sell, to get cash, but they drink a lot of coffee themselves, and it's very important for the whole culture. As we heard also from the last speech, there is a similarity. So we have approached a number of different questions in biology, ecology, but also together with human geography. Love Börjesson, for example, at Stockholm University. So one question we have looked into is the trade-off between yield and biodiversity, or revenue and biodiversity. And there are many different aspects of this, how this curve look like, and is it possible to increase the yield and the amount of coffee at the same time as keep the biodiversity and vice versa. And we have a really good system to test those kind of questions. Then we have also been very interested in top-down control of natural enemies to pests on coffee. And there is a lot to do here to find out. It's super complex with so many different pests and diseases, but also so many different roles of biodiversity in controlling it. For example, this hyperparasite that is attacking the rust that occurs in this. So it's a fungus eating another fungus. So there is a lot more to learn here. Finally, I have one slide related to climate, where the climate is becoming warmer in Ethiopia. That means that coffee can be grown at higher elevations now than before. And on those higher elevations, the balance between ecosystem services and disservices has been negative for the forest. So when coffee can't be grown, people have cut down the forest because there are problems with raiding animals, baboons and pigs coming from the forest, like here. But now when climate gets warmer, people start to plant trees and coffee at higher elevations. So even if climate change is overall negative because it imposes a change, and that is very challenging, it can also be opportunities to restore biodiversity when people change their system, agriculture system, and start to plant trees. So right now we have one PhD student at Addis Ababa University looking a little bit more into what is happening on those places above the at higher elevations where coffee couldn't be produced before, and why are people changing, and what are the changes? And it seems like there is a lot of dynamics here, and increasing tree cover because of warmer climate is actually one trajectory that is interesting to follow and see. But there could also be then more coffee washing stations with more water pollution, etc. So there are always these different complexities. But it's super interesting landscape to work in, and we have close collaboration with Alberto University and Jimma University, and I hope to be able to continue contributing with this.
Thank you so much, Kristoffer. I know that you have, it's a big research group, and you have a PhDs. You just came from Ethiopia as well, so there's much more to share ahead. And I think this bridge from the last presentation, also coffee is so important to our culture, and we see that also in Sweden now. The sort of hot debate, the coffee prices are over 100, and what is happening, and so it's really a socio-ecological complexity from the local to the global level. Thank you so much for sharing and joining us when you can. Yes. So I think this session also, now I will skip over. Okay, this session, first we were in the agroforestry and in the drylands, and sometimes we say that Focali is from the Amazon to the drylands of the Sahel. So we're really working with land use and forest and across a broad spectra, but the sort of human nature connection is always there in focus. And now we will turn over to 3 speakers. We will start, I will take this in the right order, Juliana, and then Carlos, and then Torsten. I hope the slides are in that order as well. So you can join on stage Juliana for the first talk. Juliana from Lund University will talk about what role can small-scale biogas generation in Amazon riverine communities play for transformational adaptation. So here we a little bit start the journey towards Cali as well, with these talks more connected to the Amazon. Welcome.
Yes, sorry. Maria, is this one?
Yeah, the green, yeah.
Let's see.
So you press.
That one, that green one. Yes. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'll present insights from a project, a FORMAS project that is led by 2 colleagues, Veronica, that you heard about aid here, and Alex Prast. So the slightly updated title, I updated a bit, is Harnessing the Nexus Between Community-Based Forestry Management and Small-Scale Biogas in the Amazon Towards Energy Transformation, Energy Transitions that Transform. So first I'll introduce a bit the context, and then I'll speak about biogas in that context based on empirical material focus groups there. The green one. Yes, so a bit about the area. Here we are in the Mamirawa Sustainable Development Reserve that was created in 1996 to address uncontrolled resource extraction. It's actually the first reserve in Brazil that tries to conciliate environmental protection and resource extraction. So what happens is that all sales of timber become restricted to community-based resource management schemes. And that means communities need to create an association and develop and implement a collective plan. So this means that over the last 30 years, communities have become increasingly more organized, more recognized and visible to the government and to the market, which is seen by them as something very positive. As you see here, one of our research participants says that today the management ensures the security of sales before buyers would come, take everything, and no one would receive. I remember when we cut down 200 trees to receive 1 chainsaw, and today 1 hardwood tree here can almost pay for it. So in the past, we were deceived, but now through the association in Mamirawa, we can see things more clearly. So this is somewhat of a success story, but of course, challenges remain. These communities are facing more intense and more frequent droughts and floods, which makes, farming, fishing, and forestry management more and more challenging. Another important source of income in that region is governmental benefits. Almost half of their income comes from governmental benefits. And it goes a lot to buying fuels for the boats. So both gasoline and diesel, but also for fuel for cooking. So it is in that context that our findings point to an untapped potential of small-scale biogas, which is a technology maybe you're familiar with that can generate both energy and nutrients. So some preconditions for this is the existence of organic material, which is very abundant there, including from tree residues, but also collective capacity, collective engagement that is also exceptionally strong, given their history in this, community-based management schemes. And some known benefits is the reduced greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuels, but also agricultural yields. And here, centrally, the production of local fuels in the community, which has the potential to increase very much their energy autonomy and decrease their exposure and vulnerability to these fluctuations in prices of fuels, but also their dependency on governmental benefits. What we are arguing, the argument we want to make is that bringing together, well-established community-based forest management schemes and small-scale biogas has a huge untapped potential here to increase the energy autonomy of these communities and to decrease their vulnerability. And it's not about making them less connected to governments or to markets, but making them connected in less subservient, in less vulnerable positions. So if I have also 10 seconds more, I also wanted to reconnect to the first talk and talk about the importance of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary collaborations that then bring together, the gazes of natural scientists, social scientists, and local communities in helping us see these intersectoral openings here where climate mitigation, climate adaptation, and local empowerment can meet. Yes?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
The frog has not said anything yet. So. Thank you so much. And with all these extended hit speeches, you can catch them over lunch and break to find out more. Now, thank you. We're over to Carlos. Alberto Hernandez Vélez, welcome. The floor is yours. And you will talk about another important topic, the need and willingness to weave knowledges with indigenous peoples and local communities. So welcome. You can use this mic, and this should be your slides coming up.
This one?
Yeah, the green.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Nice to be here. It's been my first opportunity to be here, so I'm happy that I could make it. I'm going to make a reflection of what I'm actually doing in LUCSUS. I'm not going to present detailed results. You'll have to wait a little bit for that. But I am touching in transdisciplinary research and decolonial studies on wildlife management in the Colombian Amazon. I'm going to assume that you know where Colombia is in the Amazon. So my reflection here is the need and the willingness and how prepared we are in making this powerful slogan a reality. Because it is abundant and we are saying it very much, but how willing, prepared are we? And this requires transformations in individuals, in collectives, and in institutions. And the personal level, how much are we training and willing to go into inner transformations? On the methods also, methods that are willing to bridge these different ontologies, different ways of being or talking, and the institutional capacities and organizations itself, and the design of spaces itself. So this is what is also of my main interest in managing fauna in the Amazon forest. And I can give some discussions on the different levels that this can happen in your research and what is currently happening in mine, using also this nice image in Stockholm of the different layers that we can work in and how the weaving of knowledges can happen, no? It could be happening, that is happening in the top-down level, no? Organizations or individuals trying to weave knowledges from their location towards the ground, towards the ecosystem dynamics. But of course, it can also happen that communities itself are struggling or working together to trying to talk to locations and networks and individuals that are distant from their ecosystems. And they have a challenge itself also. How aware are we of these bidirectional challenges? And of course, this can also happen in horizontal levels. Maybe your challenges are not addressing directly ecosystem, but maybe you are talking with your own institution or your own municipality, and that is your challenge. I'm trying to grab as much as possible here. And this happens with the example that I'm working here now is the different uses that forest fauna has in this Colombian region. Most of it is edible, but a part of it is used in commerce, medicine, it is used in ceremonies, in ornaments, as companion also. Tourism, no, people traveling different places just to see this species of birds or mammals or specific questions. Indicators of climate change, but also messengers of different ontological structures. When you dream about an animal, then your behavior needs to change and you communicate to the community. So my current struggle, maybe you share this with me, is that we are in between. We are translators in many different, we're kind of in between worlds, and yourself, you are a third world in this question. So we have the socio-ecological system with indigenous knowledge and the different realities, the carbon market, the religious missionaries, illegal drug trafficking, you name it, on the outside interacting with different interests. No? So how trained am I in this case and my exposition to natural sciences, social sciences, psychological training, because once you deal with indigenous communities, I mean, we all have a level of trauma, even with big T or small t, but when you work with indigenous communities systematically disgregated, then you have to be trained a little bit more in this. How is this happening? Well, this is some images of how are we making this with Torsten, with medicine and trying to weave these knowledges about this. And to close this, the frog isn't working now, is that the weaving of knowledges has been going on for thousands of years. This is not something that we have invented. No? Indigenous communities have structures and methods that have been working for thousands of years on how to connect different ways of thinking. So we are kind of reinventing the wheel, and we get excited about it. But that is good enough. We are on that level. So thank you very much. You can contact me to continue conversation. Sorry for the extension.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carlos, and thank you for challenging us and asking how willing really we are. And there's much more in your research that we will dig into ahead as well. And thank you for taking us also to Colombia, where we will be more in the session coming up. And now I would like to invite the final speaker in this pitch session, Torsten Krause, Deputy Director LUCSUS. So welcome, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see many of you again. And it's always nice to be in Stockholm. Coming from Lund, it seems like it's a bit of a long journey, but it's always very nice to come here. So my name is Torsten. I work at Lund University Centre for Sustainability Studies, and I'm going to present a project that we have started about 1.5 years ago, and that basically has been born out of me working for almost 15 years in different countries, different contexts, mostly in Ecuador and also in Colombia the last 10 years, and realizing that when we talk about conservation, the Amazon, biodiversity, wildlife, very often we are facing very difficult situations, not just in the political environment or as academics, but also when we're going to the ground and we work with people, we realize how much violence there is around these issues that are not often talked about. So we started to apply for a big farmers project that we got as well as a group. It's not just me, it's a group of people from very different backgrounds, from the law faculty in Lund, from political science, from geography, from human rights law, and so on, to study environmental human rights defenders. We focus on Colombia, but it's a global study in order to understand what motivates people to really almost like give their lives to a cause that I think we all share is really important, because it's not just about a particular territory or a species, it's about the survival of humanity. And environmental human rights defenders for a long time, but especially the last 12 years, when there has been more statistics by Global Witness, NGOs that are working with these issues more directly, have really shown a horrible trend around the world. That thousands of people are losing their lives defending what we should all care about much more. They're standing in the way of large-scale interests of governments, of illegal armed groups, defending biodiversity, defending forests, defending wetlands, dry forests, coastal ecosystems for their community benefits, but also for the global benefit of all of us. It's a long list. Unfortunately, there's thousands of people who have lost their lives in the last 14, 15 years. These are just some really well-known cases. Berta Cáceres of the Lenca people in Honduras fighting against hydropower. She was killed in 2016, made the headlines internationally, one of the really big famous cases. In Colombia, where we mostly focus on and work, Sandra Liliana Peña, NASA Indigenous activist and also governor of a territory fighting against illegal crops. She's been abducted and killed 3 years ago. Freddy Pestaña Herrera, who's also fighting for land restitution and the recognition of indigenous land rights, has been killed also 3 years ago. And 2 years ago in Brazil, very close to where Juliana is actually working, made international headlines. A Brazilian indigenous activist and English or British investigative journalists working for The Guardian have been murdered because they were trying to expose illegal wildlife trade and illegal trade in wood. These are just some of these people who are really giving their lives. And we are studying really, okay, what motivates them? What are the obstacles they're facing? What are international policies and legal principles in place to support them? For example, the Escazú Agreement. And what kind of success stories can we also show? What really makes these people continue their struggles, and how can we as academics support them? How can we build those bridges to support people who are really giving their lives every day, doing something that we all care about: the climate, forests, livelihoods, biodiversity. We see a very clear trend globally. I mean, probably the numbers are not showing the full picture. But we know that Latin America, and this is from Global Witness, which is an organization that works with this much more closely, Latin America is really the most dangerous region to be an environmental human rights defender or an indigenous activist or biosphere defender. Particularly countries like Honduras, Nicaragua, and Colombia are sticking out, but also so is Brazil. And most importantly, half of the people who have been murdered in the last 14 years are indigenous or Afro-Colombians, for instance. So they come from minority groups. These are the groups that are often still much more connected to the land, to the livelihoods, and are defending their rights against all kinds of interests. Very often we don't know who perpetrators are, or there's no political interest to uncover and to investigate further. So we focus on Colombia because that's where I've been working for the last 10 years. We have several case studies in Colombia, in the Caribbean coast, in Cauca, and then one particular case study we focus on right now with two of the PhD students who also work at LUCSUS, Juan Samper and Valentina Lomanto, is in the Putumayo region. And there we are uncovering and following very closely the resistance against a large-scale mining project. And this is connected to global markets. We're going to hear more about this later on, but we know that we are currently in a transition towards green energy, the green transition, and for this we require many more minerals. New mines are going to be opened up. In this particular case, we talk about one of the largest copper reserves in South America, almost done. And we are following this because it overlaps. This is a mining concession in the southern part. It's in the Andean Amazon transition area. It's a very biodiversity-rich, culturally rich area. We are following a process where indigenous people like Zoraida Chindoy, who's from the Inga people, whose territory overlaps with the mining concession, their fight, their struggles, the legal struggles, the political struggles, the everyday violence they're facing in their resistance. So we conducted several times field work and interviews. She has been in Sweden in October to present her case at the conference in Lund. We had meetings with Oxfam as well to show basically how the global transition and this green transition is connected to ongoing violence, slow violence, psychological violence, gender-based violence in places like in the Putumayo, in this area where Zoraida is from. I'm happy to talk more about it. It's an ongoing work in progress. There's some publications already coming out, and I'm here all day, so I'm not going to run away. Thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you, Torsten, and it feels bad to cut you short here. This is a really important topic, so please talk more with Torsten about this really on the front line, defending life and defending our common planet. So with that, yes, and please connect. We're a few minutes behind the schedule, but we will have a leg stretch for 5 minutes so that you get, if you need, you can stretch, you can get water, we will put on mics, but please be here in 5 minutes and we will start the journey from Cali to Belém.